Captain Slog, Stardate 5. These are the continued voyages of Ensigns Mark and Eddie as we continue to chronologically critique Star Trek The Next Generation, here coming to you live from 10 Forward, where we're watching the established episodes of Star Trek that they have on board the ship's computer. I'm Eddie, and I'm joined as always by Mark O'Neill. Mark, how you been?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, my washing machine isn't draining. Other than that, fine. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I've had bad news, look, this is the weird thing, right? Because what I've found out this week is that the tumour in my head has grown, and there's stuff, but that's not what I want to talk about. I want to see Eternals, and there's a trailer before Eternals. Right, I just want to discuss it. Are you familiar with the Roland Emmerich movie Anonymous?
It's the only Roland Emmerich movie I haven't seen because it's nearly impossible to find for some reason.
Right. So that movie is the movie in which Roland Emmerich puts forward the argument that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. And there is a fantastic takedown of the entire movie on YouTube by a guy called Brows Held High. And it basically goes through the entire conspiracy. Basically, if you believe the conspiracy theory that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare is a conspiracy theory that exists because people think that democracy is a mistake and the monarchy should never have... Look, basically, the English Civil War shouldn't have happened because there was this secret heir to the throne who should have been king instead of Charles. And if that had happened, we wouldn't have lost the colonies and there wouldn't be democracy anywhere in the world. But the upshot of it is, Roland Emmerich buys into that because he doesn't think... Because he's a very wealthy man from birth, and he thinks that Shakespeare should be a wealthy man because he likes to see himself in Shakespeare. I just wanted to get that bit of context into anybody who's listening to this brains before I tell you about the trailer I saw.
We'll come back to this later because I actually have things to say about that conspiracy theory.
Yeah. The trailer for the new Roland Emmerich movie. Have you heard about this?
It's called... Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it, yeah.
Do you know what the plot is?
The moon falls?
Nope. I thought it was that. I thought it was like, the moon's going to fall and it'll be like a great... No, Mark. The plot of Moonfall is, what if the moon attacked? Okay. This is a man who in his head thinks he's Shakespeare. I just want to bring that home. One of the lines from the trailer is, I believe I'm quoting this verbatim, "No, we're not dead. We're inside the moon." To which Samwell Tarly from Game of Thrones replies, "That's the best sentence anyone's ever said." And I'd say, I don't think it's in the top 90%.
Movies are getting to... There's a phrase in writing known as hanging a lantern. And it's when something ridiculous happens in your movie and your characters then comment on how ridiculous it is. And it generally has to be outside of things like spoofs and parodies, because that's their whole job, is to hang lanterns on things. That's why they exist. Hanging a lantern on it is what absolutely fucking ruined Fast and Furious 9. Fast and Furious 5 through 8, I will defend as movies good enough that we could show alien ambassadors. I think they show a lot of inclusivity. They're a bit sexist, but the women do get fun things to do. And I think that they showcase human ingenuity in the very clever ways that Vin Diesel figures around a plot by just having the idea, what if cars fell out of a plane? And then 20 minutes later has the entire plot of the movie. Genius. I genuinely and unironically will champion Fast and Furious 5 through 8 to anyone who will sit and listen. Fast and Furious 9 is garbage because one of the very first things that happens is that Tyrese's character Roman gets stuck in like a jungle pyramid. Great. Fine, we haven't been to the jungle in these movies yet. I want to see what happens when we go to the jungle. they achieve it. It's hard to drive It's hard to drive on the ice with a submarine chasing you, but they accomplish it. And Tyrese is surrounded by 12 guys with guns. He has a gun with 3 bullets. And not only do the guys all accidentally kill themselves, Tyrese absolutely survives. And then spends the rest of the movie questioning, why do we keep getting into situations where we should be dead and surviving? And that takes me right out of it, because I'm like, no, you shouldn't know this. No. Fuck it. Like, and it's, I think it's even worse that the character that they got to deliver this steaming pile of shit all over one of my favourite franchises is the one character in the team where if he never came back with no explanation whatsoever, I wouldn't even question it.
What I genuinely, I have a great deal of affection for the Fast and the Furious franchise, because I would love to go back in time to just after I'd watched the first Fast and the Furious, which was shortly after it came out, which Mark, I'm not going to, you know this, but I want to remind everybody who's listening. The Fast and the Furious, the first movie, is a movie about people using street racing cars to steal DVD players out of the back of trucks, right? And I wish I could go back in time and show like myself a clip from the one where The Rock runs straight through a wall. Be like, this is the logical progression of this series, and have me go, no, it's not. What? And goes, wait.
I would show myself the bit where The Rock leans out of a car on skis and kicks a torpedo on top of a frozen lake into another car.
Right. If we're going to talk about my favourite moment in the entire... Because okay, so I've not watched all of the Fast and the Furious, but I have watched Hobbs and Shaw. And I love Hobbs and Shaw. Yeah. Because there is a bit in Hobbs and Shaw where The Rock is driving a car down the street and somebody is driving towards him in a motorbike, so he just leans out the window and grabs them off of the motorbike. They're travelling towards him at about 60 miles an hour. He's travelling towards them, which means the combined pressure on the Rock's arm is 120 miles per hour multiplied by whatever the weight of that guy is. and the thing about the Rock is nothing about that seems unplausible. I'm like, yeah, no, it's...
There's a bit in Fast and Furious 7 where the Rock is in hospital because his arm and leg are broken, and when he hears that there is trouble in downtown Los Angeles where his hospital is, he gets up and flexes his arm, tenses his arm so hard that the cast breaks, and Vin Diesel thinks that he is the main star of that franchise.
The thing about that that's ridiculous though is I'm pretty certain The Rock is the main character of reality.
Yeah, he's doing well.
Motherfucker's gonna be president. But anyway.
Yes, isn't he? That is going to happen. And I like The Rock, but the knowledge that the world has descended to the point where The Rock has a real shot at becoming president is why I don't recycle anymore. So
you should be able to run a campaign video against the man running for president that is just a video of him hitting Mick Foley over and over again with a chair.
Exactly. Right, going back to Shakespeare. Do you know who also believes that Shakespeare wasn't the real Shakespeare?
I know some names. I know Jerry Jacobi's into it, but...
Yeah. And now, I don't obviously want to slander anyone, but I will say with 100% certainty, and he can sue me if I'm wrong, because whatever, the actor Mark Rylance, I believe, doesn't believe that Shakespeare was the real guy. But also, at one point, I think he was head of Shakespeare Productions at Shakespeare's Globe. I also... My job... I'm not going to say what my job is, because I don't want... I get enough death threats from my own friends. But my job involves me kind of hanging out with people I don't really know for, like, extended periods of time, finding anything to talk about. And one time I spent about 2 hours alone with a woman from Costa Rica who was a professor of Shakespeare at a local university, and she didn't think that Shakespeare was a real guy either. She said that the reason that they had to do it, the reason that they had to pretend that, I think it's not Sir Francis Drake. He's the guy. Yeah, he's the main character from the Uncharted video game series.
It's the Earl of Sussex, I want to say, but I can't remember.
But basically, whoever this dude was wanted to essentially bring down the monarchy by inciting the working class. And the way to do that wasn't really through literature, it was through performance. But if you go to see a play, because a play was the working man's entertainment, if you go to see, you're not going to go and see a play written by an earl, you're going to go and see a play written by some guy. So basically, Shakespeare was the original Nigel Farage.
Do you know the full conspiracy theory about it? It's the Earl of, I think it's the Earl of Oxford and how it. So the full conspiracy theory is that the Earl of Oxford isn't just secretly Shakespeare. He's also secretly the bastard child of Queen Elizabeth, and because Queen Elizabeth was unaware that what happened to her bastard children who were sent off all over the place, he also later becomes Queen Elizabeth's lover, who he has an incest baby with, and that is the child that should have been on the throne instead of Charles, and then we wouldn't have got Oliver Cromwell, and we wouldn't have had democracy.
I know that you don't really get on with your mum either, but I don't know if you would stoop to that. That is quite impressive.
Yeah, it's when you find out all the details about it, it's QAnon levels of batshit.
I was going to say, speaking of batshit, but I actually quite liked this episode.
Yeah, so did I. I thought this was quite fun.
Yeah.
It's got some issues.
It's not an all-time great by any stretch, but it might be the first good one.
It's got a solid 1 minute scene that doesn't need to be in the episode at all and completely ruins the character of Wesley Crusher, like more than he needed to be. Like it's if you wanted to write a scene specifically to turn the average Star Trek fan against a character, it is the scene that they put in this episode about Wesley, which is. Should we? Let's. We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So the plot of this episode is that it's called Where No One Has Gone Before, which is a clever name.
Also, at one point, a character says where no one has gone before, which my girlfriend and I were watching it, and when they said that, it allowed us to lean forward and point at the screen in a very Leonardo DiCaprio fashion, as is the tradition in our house. If the name of a movie or program is said in the movie or program, you have to lean forward and point at the screen.
Point at it and go,
I've met people who don't do that, I'm not even doing a joke here. I'm so used to doing that, it legitimately confuses me that they are confused by what I just done.
I will say this, it gets annoying. It does get annoying for other people when I insist on doing it in movies where the movie is named after the main character. When J. Jonah Jameson's like, bring me pictures of Spider-Man, and I'm like, so he is.
That would get annoying, yeah, you're right.
I guess I'm just a RoboCop.
The best, I mean, RoboCop is full of every line in RoboCop is the best line in RoboCop. But I think one of the best lines in RoboCop isn't even in the movie because it's on the poster. Part man, part machine, all cop.
There's an insurance advert at the moment that has RoboCop in it on British TV, and it infuriates me because RoboCop says the line, "I have to go somewhere there is a crime."
Yeah.
Which it isn't the fucking line. Like, you've paid RoboCop money. have him say the damn line. So I have to go somewhere there's a crime happening.
I hate that advert for the same reason that one of the best reviews I read of the 2016 or 2015 RoboCop reboot was simply the line, "The fact that they made a reboot of RoboCop means that they fundamentally misunderstood RoboCop."
That's gone into the top 10 all time. My favourite reviews of all time. My favourite review ever is a review that Mark Commode did of Taken 3, which is just the line, "Taken 3 makes Taken 2 look like Taken." But anyway, enough of RoboCop. So the plot of this episode is there's a bloke coming to visit the Enterprise who's going to make their engines go faster. That's the basic premise.
Yeah.
And like it starts off with like Riker's like, "Oh, we've gone through his plans," and they're gibberish. Riker again is immediately starting off being kind of a dick in this episode. Like, I don't like this guy. I don't trust him. He's been on a bunch of other ships. He says they're going faster, but fuck him, I don't believe him.
Yeah.
And then
this guy Kaczynski, who well, we'll get to this in a minute, but this guy Kaczynski, he beams onto the Enterprise with his partner, who is an alien of some sort.
Yeah, and that actor who plays the alien in this was the second pick to play Data when they were doing the initial casting.
I recognised him from things, but I didn't know what things.
He didn't get that role, and they sort of gave him this. Also, I've got to say, the guy who plays Kaczynski, Stanley Cavell, is such a quintessential that bloke actor. That when I saw him, I was so certain he was some like I knew him from like a big role in something else, that I went onto his IMDb page, and his like known for section, the fourth thing listed is this episode of Star Trek.
So he comes in with another guy, a sort of bagman style character, a sort of partner that he has, who's this alien.
What's the character's name, Mark?
Well, the character's... Riker asks the character's name, and the character then says, "My name is completely unpronounceable by humans." But then I say, why not just come up with a name that is pronounceable? Yeah. Surely that would make things not only easier on a daily basis for yourself, but it makes you appear to be less of an asshole. Like, if you refuse to come up with a name for yourself because your own name is unpronounceable, that's like knobhead behaviour. Just call yourself Dave. Like, just recognise the other... Like, when people say Dave, they're referring to you. They're not putting you down. You're the one who came up with your own name.
Yeah, no one's got time for this Clint Eastwood man with no name bollocks.
Yeah.
It's... Yeah.
Also, it'd be unpronounceable by human tongues. Try. Maybe Chief O'Brien can get it.
Well, yeah, but do the noise. Tell us what the noise is, and we'll tell you whether or not we can pronounce it.
Yeah, or do the noise, and then we'll like zoom in on like a sound from that we can do, and then just call you like the Aussies do. Just call you that sound with a Y at the end.
Yeah.
Winnie.
Yeah.
All right, Winnie.
I've got one on my notes. After they beam in, they go to engineering. Kaczynski is obviously a fan of Star Trek The Next Generation, because his first line on walking into engineering is simply to point at Wesley off screen and say, "Why is this child here?"
He also... So they take him up to the bridge?
I don't think they take him up to the bridge.
Because he comes on and he immediately starts giving it the biggins about how the captain isn't there to greet him. Riker then takes him to the bridge, and then he starts giving Picard shit. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, that guy's a fucking ensign.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of "I'm too smart to explain myself" bollocks.
Yeah.
Like, he's trying to pull a Gregory House. Like, I'm such a genius that I don't have to have social skills. And it's like, well, actually, there's a fucking chain of command here, dickhead. So yes, you do.
Yeah.
Also, there's a point later. So they go to like when they go down to engineering to enter the things, and they're like, "Oh, he can try it because as far as we can tell, this is absolute shit, and it won't." And the bearded engineer guy's like, "Yeah, he can do what he wants. It's not going to do anything. I've looked. It doesn't make any sense."
I say go into anyone's house and do that to their car. Just be like, can I just play about with this for a while? And then they'll be like, I mean, I see your plans for how you're going to play about with it. I mean, it's not going to do anything, but yeah, you crack on. No, let's not even, it's not even a car, someone's car. Let's do that on a nuclear submarine.
Yeah. It's mental that they allow this to go ahead. And it's basically what is going on, and it's pretty obvious to us, the viewer, is that Kaczynski thinks he's playing around, but his mate, his like assistant, is actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Because Wesley's like hanging out and talking to him, and Wesley understands sort of what's going on, and this like traveller guy's like, "Ooh, someone understands."
Good, nice.
Yeah. And then they play around with the warp core. Everything goes flashy. The assistant fades in and out of existence. And then we get a Doctor Who. They go past Warp 10 and we get a Doctor Who style space tunnel.
Yep.
And then suddenly and then this is one of my favourite moments. I love this bit in this episode. They're travelling at like faster than any ship has ever travelled. And Picard doesn't like this, so he gives the command to Geordie to reverse the engines. And Geordie says, "No one's ever done that at this speed." To which Picard replies, "That's because no one's ever been this speed."
Just as a point of admin, to maintain the illusion that we are sitting on 10 forward on the Starship Enterprise, they had to retcon this later down the line, from what I understand, because it's physically impossible to even do Warp 10. If you were to do Warp 10, you would literally exist at every point in the universe at once. That's how fast you would be going. So they then, and I think at some point they mention this in a later episode, but then they have to retcon that somewhat again, because they have to figure out, if we can already go Warp 9 and the Borg can go exponentially faster than us, how do we figure that out? So then you get Transwarp 1, but no, you never get to Warp 10.
Yeah, in fact, nobody has ever sat down in the like writers' room of the Star Trek writers and gone, "We have to agree what happens when you go past Warp 10."
Yeah.
Because in Voyager, there's an episode where Janeway and Paris both go past Warp 10, and they devolve into lizard creatures. And then go have lizard creature babies on an uninhabited planet, and then turn back into humans and leave. Which is, when we get around to doing Voyager, Mark, there's going to be a lot of episodes where I have a lot of questions about shit that doesn't make any fucking sense, because Voyager's a mess. But
so
yeah, they go. So they've gone past Warp 10. They do the reverse engines, and then this is something I want to bring up, because they do what's our position? And Data's like, "Oh, I've checked," and they've left their own galaxy. And they've passed through two others. They've gone 2,700,000 light years, which is the number Data gives, which seems suspiciously round.
It's like how in Avengers Infinity War, when Doctor Strange checks the alternate realities, and Tony says, "How many did you look for?" and he goes, 14,860,008.
Yeah, like even if the number is exactly round, I'd add a couple of light years on the end just to make it sound more precise.
Yeah, because otherwise Picard isn't going to believe you. It's about like how, did you know that when they first released the iPod Shuffle,
yeah,
it shuffled so well that people didn't believe that it was very good at shuffling, because occasionally you would get full albums in a row, which is unlikely to happen, extremely unlikely to happen, but with the number of people who bought them and the number of music and albums, eventually that is going to happen. So they then had to go back and literally make it less random to make it appear random. Yeah. And again, this is why I don't recycle.
This is the same as like the guys who first measured the height of Everest added like 3 feet on because it was exactly a certain height, and they were like, "Well, no one's going to believe that we measured it." But here's my question: like, how do they know? Because they go like, "Oh, we checked our position from all the relevant stars," but the way light years work is we know what those stars will look like in 2,700,000 look like 2,700,000 years ago. So we have no idea. I have no idea how. This is one of those things in Starfleet, in Star Trek, where we're going to have to like hand wave it away. Where it's like they know they're this far because they've got something that tells them that.
And I argue that it would have been much more effective than saying we are 300 years away from home if they just had Picard go, LaForge, where are they? Where are we? And Geordie went, oh.
They're 300 years from home at full warp, and if they send a radio message back, it will take 51 years to get there via subspace.
Right, I have a question about that, because the question is obviously, this is Captain Picard. We are stranded on, like, 2 galaxies away. It's going to take 300 years to get back there at standard warp, right? Did Starfleet ever get that message 51 years in the future? And do they then have to call up Picard and be like, we just got a voicemail from you, man. Are you all right? And then Picard's like, oh, shit, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention it.
So we know for a fact that the Enterprise has episodes of Next Generation up to exactly when has happened in the episode on their, like, drive.
Yeah.
But I think we can confirm that these records aren't shared on other ships.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if like they'd gotten back, like I just feel like when Janeway got back from spending 7 years schlepping back from the Delta Quadrant, if somebody had been like, "Oh, do you not watch episode 5 of Next Generation?"
I hope there's some guy on Voyager that spent that 7-year journey watching 7 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
This is like at this point when this is happening. I'm just going to call him. They don't name him the Traveller until later. I'm just going to call him the Traveller for ease. He's talking to Wesley, and they have a conversation about how space, time, and thought are not as separate as they seem to be. And the Traveller's like, "Don't fucking tell anyone that.
Yeah,
it's dangerous nonsense." It's like, whereas if somebody said that to me, I wouldn't assume they had dangerous knowledge. I'd assume they was a fucking hippie.
Yeah, he would have been like, don't ever think that. Like, that's dangerous to think that. There was one guy 300 years ago, this guy Eugene Roddenberry, who had that thought, and
yeah,
we had to kill him.
Whoever wrote this episode of Star Trek had that thought, and I don't know their name. Then
yeah. So yeah.
Oh, I want to talk about something that happens on the bridge here because it's a great line. They're talking about what they can do to get back, and Kaczynski's like, "Well, just let me do it again." And they're all like, "Well, that's..." And Picard's like, "I don't know if that's a good idea." And then there's silence for a second, and Picard just goes, "Comment is invited."
I wrote down, this guy is pretty fucking brash for an ensign that just trapped them 300 years from home. Even Harry Kim wouldn't be giving it that shit.
I've also got... I love the fact... I've got about here... Worf has a rare moment where he's completely fucking right, where he says, "Can you let a man who has made one mistake back into a position where he may make another?" in what I can only read as a blistering takedown of Boris Johnson. and Data's like, "Well, we're here now, let's study it, it'll be great." And Picard's like, "But it's not much use if we can't fucking tell anyone."
yeah Who's gonna read them?
Somebody in 51 years' time.
they then go back down to the engineering, because Picard's like, "Well, we can't solve this problem, and we're going to have to try it. It's either that or stay here." And that's when I wrote down, "Is this Kaczynski's first day? He doesn't even know how to address the other crew members." He said, when Riker asks if he's ready, he says, "I'm ready, first officer."
Sir, just sir.
Sir, or Commander Riker. Not his job. Like M doesn't call out to Miss Moneypenny, secretary. Can you? Well, maybe he does.
He probably might have done it.
I was trying to think of an example there, and then I was like, actually, there's a lot of things where you just would call someone's job their job if you were an asshole.
Yeah, that's I think that's it. He's just a cunt.
Yeah,
he's the kind of person who refers to like a shop assistant as shop assistant. Yeah, so they go back and Kaczynski tries to do the same thing, but he can't do it because the Traveller's not there because he's all knackered.
Oh, he's in a space bed.
Yeah. Oh no, not yet, because this is so he like Wesley's like it's not him, it's the Traveller, and the Traveller has a go, and they jump even further, and they end up in a weird blue space with lights flying around that doesn't look like normal space. Now I've got some very important notes on the next section, which is 1. We get a captain's log supplemental.
Oh, I love these.
Is he going to his room? Like, I would assume that the captain's log is done at the end of the day. Like,
yeah.
when it's time to write up your official reports. I wouldn't assume where it's like, oh, fucking hell, things have taken a turn for the worse. Anyway, I've got to go write out 4 No. But there's also, and this is so I really need to bring up. They calculate, Mark, that they are 1 billion light years from home, far beyond where anybody knows. Like they're like, oh, snow, nobody knows what's here. We're 1 billion light years from home. The observable universe, Mark, from Earth is 46.5 billion light years across. So they're still well within sight of Earth. This is not like if they'd gone 100 billion, then yeah, and fine.
The Earth is what, 13 billion years old?
Yeah, the Earth is 13 billion years old.
So they'd still be able to look at the Earth.
Sorry, the Earth is weird. The Earth is 4 billion.
6,000.
Yeah, you add up the ages of everybody in the Bible and you get 6,000. The Earth is 4 billion years old. The universe is 13.8 billion
That's
years.
the one, yeah.
At a minimum, you can see 13.8 billion years in every direction. But then also, the universe has expanded since then, so you can see further. But it's well within the realms of shit we can see. And I'm not going to keep having a go at the science, but like, fucking 20 seconds with a textbook would have fucking fixed that one.
Yeah. We then, because we get to a place that the Traveller sort of warned us about earlier, which is where space and time and thought start to intermingle a bit more than they do in like where our universe has expanded to, like our section of the universe where thought isn't quite as intertwined with time and space, and things that the crew are thinking about start to come true. One of them, I've just written down, Rhino Pig Sad Wharf.
A Klingon Targ shows up, and it is some of the... I mean, it's weird that they had CGI this good at this point, Mark, that they could create such a realistic-looking creature that doesn't at all look like a pig in a wig. Yeah, a Klingon Targ turns up, and, like... Okay, I'm saying I really read up is Worf sees this, and Tasha sees it, and they both react to it. The two guys at their stations directly either side of Worf don't even fucking turn around. There is a dangerous wild animal on the bridge, and they're just like, no, I've got buttons I've got to point at lights and tap things.
I like that, because it's literally like a pig with a horn and some fur on it.
Yeah.
And Worf says, this is a pet that I had when I was a boy on Kronos. Yeah. And Tasha then replies, so it's a kitty cat. Yeah. No, Tasha, it's clearly a pig.
I want to say a few things about this. One, I respect the shit out of the fact that they did this with a pig rather than like it's a weird choice, but it works in the context of what it is. But also, the moment Tasha says it's a kitty cat, it disappears, and in the second that it disappears, Michael Dorn should have won a fucking Oscar.
Oh, he looks so sad.
The heartbreak on his fucking face. And then, unfortunately, because stuff from people's minds is turning up. So Tasha then sees a cat.
Yep.
And I paused it at this point and made the joke, I assume this was Tasha's anti-rape cat. And then, before anything else happens, Picard opens the door of he's gone down to engineering, he opens the door of the turbo lift into what I have written down is the screaming void of space.
I said, I hate when you tell the turbo lift to go to the engineering section and instead it goes to the infinite abyss.
And then instead of sticking on that, which I'm assuming was an ad break, like originally, like open door, instead of us coming back to that, we then come back to Tasha Yar, who, of course, is thinking about her favourite subject. It's the rape gangs.
I like to think that this is a pretty woke podcast. And I like to think we're pretty fucking woke guys, right? But, and obviously we just have to take this as read, but it is going to get to the point, Tasha, the more you think about rape gangs, the more people are just going to think you're frankly protesting too much.
Yeah.
To go back to Shakespeare.
Which is exactly what a rape gang like.
Right.
And look, to be clear, I want to be absolutely clear. Like, there's like a flashback. She's there. She's got her cat. There's a gang coming towards her, and I wrote down as a joke, "Oh, it's probably a rape gang." She's then back on the bridge, and Geordie's like, "What's wrong, Tasha?" And she's like, "It was a rape gang." Like, this isn't. This is. There's no doubt left. Jesus Christ! What is this? The only thing? Like, look, here's the thing. I get that like trauma stays with you.
Yeah.
Okay, but they've literally just travelled a bit like to off the edge of space forever. Is this popped into Tasha's head because she's like, thank fuck, this is probably the one place I'm not going to run into a rape gang?
And also, what is it with male writers? Like, do they, like, obviously rape is horrible, but do they understand that women can have other traumas?
and also that if you are a rape victim, that isn't the only thing that you are. Like, there's other, like, I mean, does Tasha have hobbies? Do we?
I mean, obviously they could have done anything for trauma, but if they wanted to go really fucked up, they could have had her see the grown-up version of the baby that she had aborted. And worse, like Pig Dog turns into it.
Quick shout out for horror movie The Suckling, in which a woman gets an abortion. The abortion is flushed down into the sewer, gets exposed to toxic waste, becomes a monster, and kills everybody in the house.
Classic.
It's a hell of a
VHS. I also wrote down, after all of that, I'm really glad that we didn't dive into Geordie's thoughts, because they're definitely real sexy and weird.
I was going to say, it's at no point in this do we actually get any of Riker's thoughts become real. And that's a result of Riker's incredible self-control of his deep sexual urges.
Or it was just that Deanna Troi, everything she did was just a manifestation of his own imagination.
I do like the fact that we do get like a jump through, because like we get some like there's a cut to, we get like one like crewman who we've never seen before. He's just playing the violin in a string quartet, and he's really fucking feeling the vibe. And I like that guy. And then later on it disappears, and he's quite sad. He's like, "Oh, I was enjoying that."
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
But equally, just go do this on the holodeck. I don't.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
There's ballet. There's two crew members running away from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to bring something up that it comes up quite a lot in Star Trek, and I feel is an annoying result of the fact that Star Trek is trying to be a bit too worthy, which is, I would already, if I was on board this ship, I'd already have us out of this situation. If you think of something, it happens and it manifests and it becomes real.
Yeah.
So why don't you just think of Batman and ask him how to fix it?
Or why don't you just think of not being in that situation anymore?
Yeah.
Just think, oh, what wouldn't it be fun if the warp drive worked properly?
Yeah.
And we were out of here.
if ever you see Freddy Krueger, then you know it's a dream, because that's where Freddy Krueger is.
Yeah.
So just immediately dream that you're Wolverine.
Yeah. There's actually a pretty decent-ish run of DC Comics from the mid-2000s that were based on A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think they do like 3 stories over 4 issues each. I think it was a 12-issue run. And 2 of the stories are literally that. Just like, if you were being attacked by Freddy, just imagine yourself able to beat Freddy, because it's your dream.
Yeah. Yeah, just imagine you've got a lightsaber and Wolverine powers and fuck him up.
Exactly. So we all get back down into engineering, I think, right? No, do we? Or do we all get back down into engineering, and then we take the Traveller to the hospital, right?
Yeah, and I also think we have our first red alert.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because Picard calls a red alert, and I don't know why I've got this in my notes. I felt compelled to write this down. At this point, I need to bring up Wesley is wearing some frankly avant-garde knitwear.
Oh, I had a comment from my girlfriend, which is just, fashion in the future is just wearing your mom's jumpers. Dr. Beverly would have looked incredible in that jumper.
Yeah, she would have.
So we get back down into engineering, and they're all questioning Kaczynski about what's going on, and Wesley says it wasn't Kaczynski, it was the Traveller. I have written down here, O'Brien would have known that it wasn't Kaczynski. Because of course he would have. He wouldn't take that shit.
Yeah. I've got... Also, there's some things in here, like Wesley says that the guy was like phasing.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, we don't live in Star Trek.
No.
But I know what he means by that.
Yeah.
You know what he means by that.
Yep.
Why doesn't Picard know what he means by that? Also, at this point, I want to bring this up. Like, as we say, we're a fairly woke podcast. I think you agree. Picard calls the Traveller a dying alien. Now, I can't help but feel that in Starfleet, where, like, because it's not just the humans only club. I think the people writing Star Trek forget it's not just the humans. It's like a lot of different worlds working together. I feel like the phrase alien is at least insensitive.
You would think that by the 23rd century we would have... Because it would be a bit like how there are like certain words, ways of describing a group of people that will often come up in conversations with my mum. Why can't I say that when the man who used to run the local corner shop called himself that? And I would say, well, it's because it's been turned into a slur. Yeah, the word is fine, and yeah, it's just a shortening of the country that he comes from, and yeah, it's fun that his name is Peter. You get some fun alliteration there, but name probably wasn't Peter. His name, much like the Traveller, was probably impronounceable to the people of 1970s Denniston. But unlike the Traveller, Peter took the initiative of fucking giving himself a name that the local Glasgow EastEnders could have pronounced, right? But yeah, you're probably right. Like they probably would have to do away with the word alien and just come up with a new word that was far more inclusive.
Yeah,
because alien obviously signifies other, but it signifies all of the others. Yeah. Whereas really,
because you can't call a Vulcan an alien. They're a Vulcan. You can't call a Klingon an alien. They're a Klingon. But this guy,
but that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, they are technically aliens by the definition of that word. They are alien to us. They are other.
Yeah, but you know that's a slur at this point.
It's got to be, man. Yeah,
because I know what humans are like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the reason that the Spastic Society had to change its name to Scope, and I'm certain in 10 years' time they'll have to change it from that because kids will be getting called Scopies. Oh.
I hope all the 11-year-olds that listen to this podcast, you've just given them an idea.
I do like the fact that basically at this point as well, everyone's kind of being a dick to Wesley because they keep calling him the boy, and Wesley's like, "My name's Wesley," and Riker's like, "I know, I'm just choosing to call you the boy."
I wrote down Picard, what's the boy doing here? The boy just figured this all out, Picard.
We like, while the character of Wesley is not great, I think we are only going to end up going to bat for him a lot.
100%. I'm always behind Wesley Crusher.
And then at this point, the Traveller has to explain that he's a traveller. And Picard's like, well, where are you travelling to? What's your destination? And he's like, no, it's not that kind of travelling. And Picard doesn't get it because he clearly never went backpacking in a gap year before going to Starfleet.
So when we were watching this, the Traveller says something like, I just want to travel to experience new types of life and see what the world is like, you know, for other people. And Picard looks really confused. And Laura paused it, turned to me and went, isn't that what they do?
It's literally the spoken aloud monologue that is in every episode of Star Trek.
You could, even if you really wanted to stretch it, the name Star Trek implies that.
Yeah, it's, oh my god. And then they say the traveller says like is trying to explain where he's from, and Picard's like, is that the future? And the Traveller's like, no. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Mark, but if I was from the future, I wouldn't let her slip my mind.
Yeah. I do, like, there's one, I didn't particularly enjoy Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, right?
No, because it's a bad film.
It's a bad movie. I think that Christopher Nolan absolutely does have his positives. I do think the guy can put a movie together. I think he is an incredible technical director. He does make some of the best spectacle that we see in modern cinema. I just don't think he makes very compelling or interesting movies character-wise, right? But the explanation for what the fourth and fifth dimensions are in Interstellar is so good that I used to get annoyed when people, because I used to work in the IMAX, and the Interstellar credits are 15 minutes long, and people used to hang out for like 15 minutes after the credits is finished discussing the fifth dimension. And you know that way that I want it to be like, one, can you get the fuck out so that we can clean this for the next bunch of assholes to come in? And two, like, I don't, like, it's fun that you're discussing something that I learned from a Grant Morrison comic when I was 11. But, okay, like, why do you think that the movie didn't explain that well enough that you need to discuss it with your pals? Do that in the pub, you wank.
There's two things I want to bring up, which is I've been told that I got told that the tumour, one of the symptoms from the tumour growing is I might get fatigue, and the list of things they told me might cause fatigue literally includes complicated film plots, and I have never once felt tired watching a Christopher Nolan movie. They are not as complicated as people make out, and in addition to that, I've been told on multiple occasions how clever Interstellar is. It's like, oh, because at the end he travels back through his own history and like influences his own life. The logic used in Interstellar in its big climax, Mark, and you'll appreciate this, is exactly the same level of complexity as the final moments of both Bill and Ted movies. They go back. They realize they can go back later and fix things for them. It's not if you don't sit around sucking fucking Bill and Ted's dick for being mind blowing and expanding your consciousness, then don't do it with Interstellar.
It's as if Christopher Nolan went, I'm going to take Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but rather than do all the good bits, I'm going to show the admin that they briefly discuss.
Yes. Okay, but yeah, it's like I say, there's a lot of this is a lot of nonsense at this point. I've
is this the minute that you wanted to bring up earlier when they're discussing Wesley, right?
Yeah, right. Because at this point, the Traveller sends everybody else out of the room and goes to goes to Picard. Oh, like I've learnt of your Mozart. Wesley is like Mozart, but for science, which is a way to force a metaphor, because we had a Mozart for science and it was Da Vinci. So I don't know why he doesn't just make that comparison. But he basically at this point is now setting Wesley up as a Mozart-style genius chosen one character. This is the equivalent, like, as a fan of Star Trek, if you were watching it at the time, the writers might as well have taken the character of Wesley out behind the shed and shot him in the face. Because at this point, it gives him no chance. Like, if you're watching it at home, you're like, well, fuck him and fuck the horse he fucking rode in on. It's unnecessary, because he literally tells Picard, "I'll just encourage him, but don't tell him that I told you this." Which you could have just had after this episode. Picard warms up a bit to Wesley and encourages him without this in there.
I wrote down, so Picard has been told that Wesley is literally one of the most important people in the history of mankind, and he still treats him like Wesley.
And then, it's absolutely baffling. I feel like nobody in the writers' room thought how this would. I think they thought that everyone was going to like Wesley.
Yeah.
And like they'd be like, "Oh, cool character." Whereas this is like, it's like where, and you want to sit down and no, we're all much more fascinated with Data.
Yeah. What's going on there? Yeah.
Yeah. As a genuinely unique and interesting character, I want to know more about. And as is proven by the fact that in Star Trek, I want to say Nemesis, like the last major dramatic beat is that, spoilers for a movie that came out fucking ages ago, Data dies. They very much, for me, told the story that Next Gen was very much Data's story.
Yeah.
It's just,
one of my favourite bits in the episode then occurs, which is Picard has to go back to the bridge because the Traveller, he sort of says, "Look, I'll go and make this right. I'll go down to engineering and I'll press the buttons with my 3 fingers."
Which means he can type faster than anyone else, including Data, who could easily be doing this shit.
That's why the Ninja Turtles were really good at social media. So Picard says, "Oh, well, you go to engineering, I'll go to the bridge." On the way to the bridge, and again, just to remind anyone who'd forgotten, while they are in this place in space, time, and thought, people's thoughts and fears are coming to life as a sort of background to the story. So Picard walks down and there is a crew member trapped by a wall of fire, and Picard tells him, "The fire's only in your mind. If you just stop thinking about it, or if you just think about putting out, it'll go away." So the guy then does this, and then Picard immediately tells him to get back to work. I wrote, if there was a fire in front of me and Captain Picard told me to put it out with my thoughts, I would believe him because it's Captain Picard. I, however, wouldn't be too happy if he then immediately told me to get back to work with no explanation of what just happened.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've realised we've skipped over something in this episode because it's something that really baffled me.
Right.
Picard, at the point in this episode, he, from his thoughts, conjures his mum.
Yeah.
Who has a French accent. Now, again, the way accents work is that, like, if you were taught to speak one language and then you have to learn another because of the different pronunciations they carry over and you won't speak. But French is a dead language, which is why Picard has an English accent. Because I'm assuming everybody in Starfleet everyone on Earth speaks Mandarin in the future, and it's been translated into English for our convenience.
In San Francisco.
But so is his? How did his mum have learn? You know, they said French is a dead language. Has French only been a dead language for like 50 years? The whole Picard is French, not English. Why didn't they just make him British, Mark?
Yeah. No, I like having a French captain, but it's pretty baffling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Picard then gets back up to the bridge and he puts out an all call, like a all something, all points bulletin, and it's the old school communicator sound.
Yeah.
And another guy in a skirt.
Yeah. It's not that. And this is as well. This is the weirdest bit because this is okay. Look, Well, we know Star Trek is socialist.
Mm-hmm.
After this episode, I think maybe the right are right about socialism, because in this socialist future, Picard literally orders his crew what to think. Yeah, he orders everybody. This is the worst thing as well, because this is a classic Ghostbusters scenario. Like, you tell everybody to think of positivity, think of getting us home, think of the Traveller being good and it will help us get home. But if you tell me to think about that, I'm immediately going to think of the ship exploding.
Yeah. Also, in a strange little another. Now that you've brought up Ghostbusters, I feel like you've opened the gates. So Gozer, the main antagonist of Ghostbusters, was a god who was sentenced to explore, who was banished from our dimension to explore other dimensions indefinitely by her sister Tiamat, who is another real Sumerian god. And so Gozer actually goes by the god name Gozer the Traveller.
Ooh.
So connected to this.
So this guy could be Gozer.
Yeah. Okay. And you also influence Gozer using your thoughts. The Traveller has come.
Yeah.
And that's why I wrote The Traveller has come. The Picard specifically tells them all to think about the Traveller's well-being. Would he be okay if I thought about giving him a relaxing hand job?
How annoyed, Mark, would you be if, like, you were just coming, like, you've been in the fourth dimension, you've been there for a bit, and then you got told, "Oh, we're leaving the fourth dimension," just as you'd worked it all out. Because, like, I'd be like, "Oh, can we stay for like a week?" Now we've all got the grips with it. I just want to. There's some very specific stuff involving Catwoman that I would like to think about,
like
in the privacy of my room.
It would make the holodeck look like fucking porn that you found in a wood.
You know what it would be? You know when, like, I remember very clearly when I was must have been about 12 or 13 years old, having a conversation with a mate of mine about how I didn't believe graphics could get better than Echo the Dolphin. And I imagine it would be like that. Like, you go back to the fucking, like, going back in there would be like playing a PlayStation 1, and you'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake.
I remember thinking Final Fantasy VIII is the best they were ever going to get, because they sort of look like real people. Yeah, but I also like the fact that when they're doing the travelling home, I've just got down here. There's tension. They're all like built up to it. We get an engage from Picard, and then from the view screen, we see that they apparently travel into the poster for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And then the Traveller. I'm just going to say, I've written down here from the Traveller's like expression on his face as they're doing this. He is definitely coming. And all he needed to finish was a nice, calming handshake from a 12-year-old.
Proving that maybe he isn't a Sumerian god, but rather the Catholic one. Yeah, and then... Oh, okay, I'm sorry. There's something that popped up right at the end of this episode that I really need to question. Is Geordie... So like, they arrive back at like the exact point they left, which seems like, just put them like somewhere, like in the right ballpark. That seems a bit too convenient.
Put them further along the journey that they were already doing.
Yeah, and then so there's like some orders given at this point, and it made me realise something about. I have a genuine question about what different people on the bridge are doing, because is Geordie steering? But Data is controlling speed and the brakes.
Yes.
That seems far more complicated than it needs to be.
Because So, yeah, I think that one of them is the helmsman.
Yeah.
But I think that warp... I think, because the differences in speed are so complicated, you basically need another person to do that job.
Right, okay.
But
it feels like you could be done by pedals.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I imagine someone who was designing starships was like, man, this is really complicated. We need at least 4 limbs to be able to do this.
So we must. Need
So we
two
must
people.
get in two guys.
Maybe it's because there are a lot of aliens in Starfleet who only have like one leg or no legs. So they're like, well, we better, just to be inclusive, split this up. and then at the end, Wesley is made an acting ensign.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll get a communicator badge, and that's it. Like, he gets staring around, and he's got a reason to be in places.
Starfleet supports child labour.
Yeah, and this is they're specifically told this isn't like just like some makeshift thing. They're like,
no, it's a full job.
He's got a full actual roster and job until he can apply to Star. This is the other thing as well. Like, is there an age limit on Starfleet? Because there must be aliens whose life cycle is quicker. Like,
oh, I get what you mean. No, I imagine it would be a case of when you are what is considered to be in your culture, in your species, an adult, you can apply to Starfleet.
But I imagine in Klingon culture, like, being considered an adult involves you having to like murder some sort of animal in a ritual on a mountain.
Probably your own pet. That's why Worf looks so sad.
How did Worf have a... Here's another thing. Like, Worf's pet... Because I don't think they've worked out Worf's backstory. Because is it not later established that Worf was raised by humans from like the age of 6 upwards? Because like his family died in an attack or something.
Oh, I don't know. Because he does have a brother. I vaguely recall that.
He's got a brother who's human.
Does he?
Yeah, so the whole thing is he's Worf's son of Moog, but Moog has been stripped of his house. So he's an outcast from Klingon society,
right?
And it's got something to do with all I really know about this is like the war with the Klingons was ended with something called the Khitomer Accords, and that's I don't know when that happened,
no.
but yeah, that happened, and then there was some sort of major attack around that time that killed Worf's parents, and Moog, his dad Moog, was like implicated in the attack.
Oh.
And it was seen as like a cowardly attack, so his family doesn't have a house or a name, and he was left orphaned, and he was raised by like humans.
Right.
On a colony. So where do you have a fucking Targ?
Maybe guess it depends where he was, what country he was raised in.
Yeah.
Maybe they have them in Wales.
But yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was quite good.
I like this. I think that this ticks all three of the boxes. Yeah, I think this is it's not only quite a decent episode, I think this is a good episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, and I would also say that we've been, for a lot of like this podcast so far, we've been very much playing up when an episode feels like it's a hangover from the original series in a bad way.
Yeah.
This could totally have been an original series episode, but a good one. Like, this is like this has the DNA. Like, the guy like season one. Board. Yeah, this is exactly like if this was entirely what Next Generation was, it wouldn't be as loved as it is because of what TNG became. But this would have been very successful, and I don't think the average Star Trek fan would have had much to complain about.
I agree.
Yeah, this is a solid episode.
I do still think that I from what I have seen, and obviously Patrick Stewart does believe this, I do agree that Measure of a Man in season 2 is the first truly brilliant episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a while
well, I mean,
before we get there.
It's something.
But like, I get it.
In what was it? There's a moment in one of the episodes we've watched already, in the racist episode, where like Picard starts giving a speech and then stops himself.
We haven't had a Picard speech yet.
We haven't had a Picard speech yet, but which will become...
We sort of had one encounter at Farpoint. But...
Yeah, a little bit of one. But yeah, you kind of like... They don't realise what they've... Like, they don't realise what they've got with Patrick Stewart. Is like, you can sit down and you can write these grandiose defences of the human condition.
Yeah.
And let him go, and he will fucking nail it every time.
And it will never be pretentious.
Yeah.
Even though it's very like... it's Yeah, it's a Picard speech. It's very big ideas, judgmental sometimes, in its breakdown of certain human behaviours. But Patrick Stewart, like he does everything. He delivers it like Shakespeare.
Yeah, and
and it's the best thing about this show.
Yeah, which we have to wait about a season and a half to get to. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. I do think, like I say, it fully, like if this was released in the age of the internet, literally within seconds of this episode being up, there would have been a hashtag trending called "Fuck Wesley Crusher, the chosen one." Like this is they nailed that character to a fucking fence with this, and like it's not necessary. And I feel this if you could delete this one moment alone from Next Generation, people would probably have a much kinder view on the Wesley character.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I enjoyed this one. And the next episode is The Lonely Among Us, which I have no recollection of. Like, I've seen a picture of an alien from it, and I can't even remember them existing.
I've just looked up on Wikipedia. This does have the second appearance of Miles O'Brien.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm into it.
Awesome.
Although I do like reviews were mostly negative, with criticism directed at the writing in particular.
Which might not make for a good viewing experience, but is going to make for a great podcast.
That was that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, bye.
Bye.